We're talking about sound, so I want to get this right.
It's going to fill up, so it's
All right, that's good. I've got 30 minutes to cover 41 years in practice using high-tech sound frequencies for healing various conditions and advanced technologies for meditation. So, the concept is, at one point, a few thousand years ago, these things started showing up. This one's from India. At one point, there was the first monk who walked out from behind a monastery with one of these. Somebody made the first one and started rubbing it, and it put you into this sort of immediate state when you have been sitting on your butt for 30 years trying to figure out what you're supposed to be doing, and nobody can really explain it to you. The best you can do is some kind of a Zen koan or something, like what's the sound of one hand clapping. But if you listen, so there's this sort of beautiful tonality, and a tonality is a direct response of the alloy. And the alloy of these bowls, this is a bronze bowl, and there's brass bowls as well. Bronze is 97% copper, and if it's bronze, then it's mixed with tin. But 2 3/4% tin, and the rest is something like antimony or bismuth. Here's another one. It's another bronze bowl. The brass bowl is brighter, more yellowish. So the one thing to notice right off the bat, aside from the nice tone that puts you into this place, there's a pulse. You hear the pulse? There's 2 pulses. There's a slow one and a fast one. Wah, 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 wah. Here. Wah, 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 wah. And that's a brainwave frequency. That's the secret of the bowls, is that they're brainwave entrainment devices to put you into a state of consciousness. The tonality is nice and it centers you, but within it are these pulses that are at known brainwave speeds, taking advantage of something we call brainwave entrainment. So listen to the small bowl again. Wah, 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 wah. That's an upper theta brainwave state. Theta is where you go when you're dreaming. Whoa, 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 whoa. That's a little bit slower. But that's how you can tell a good bowl from a bad bowl, by the pulse, what brain frequency is taking you to. Back in those days, this was all done intuitively. You would cast the bowl, you would hammer the bowl, you would polish the bowl, and you would tune the bowl until you got these frequencies that put you into the state you're trying to get to. The frequency pulses are coming from the fact that the bowl has got a curve. And the diameter down here is different than the diameter right here. So this is a larger bowl, that's a smaller bowl, and each one has a different tone. The 2 tones are mixing together inside the bowl in something called binaural beats. Binaural means 2, and bi means 2, aural means sound. So 2 sounds are combining together that creates this wah wah. I call this a monophonic binaural beat. Monophonic meaning The two tones are within one sound source. There was a research project done and published in Scientific American in 1973 called Auditory Beats in the Brain. That's the October 1973 edition of Scientific American by a guy named Gerald Oster. He's the first one who experimented with the concept of brainwave entrainment using binaural beats. The original way of doing it is with a drum, a shamanic drum. So I'm pounding a drum. That's about right. And if you take that to a recording studio and you do a spectral analysis of it, you see that that's at 5 hertz theta. And since your body clocks are timing your body processes to the world to save energy, you're constantly looking under the hood, looking for the most dominant pulses in your environment to time yourself to, because it saves energy to do so instead of inventing your own moment by moment. And everything in the universe is running this principle of ecology and getting most work for the least amount of energy expended. So this is an underlying cosmic principle called the principle of coupled oscillators. Everything in the universe is trying to resonate together, dance together to save energy. Everybody's sort of dancing to the same drum beat, but nobody's beating the drum except everyone by consensus vote. It's like if you're in a big circle and you do an Om chant, then it'll be cacophonic in the beginning, but the group kind of finds its voice and centers on a single tone. That's a coupled oscillator network in action. Same thing with how your cells and your body work together. And we can take advantage of that. Gerald Oster showed that if we take 2 sine waves, man-made tones with no harmonics, and we put them in 2 speakers, and we have 100 hertz tone and 105, they're very closely tuned to each other. So 100 and 105 is air molecules coming out of the speakers, colliding in the middle between the speakers, slightly out of phase by 5 hertz. So you hear this 5 hertz wah-wah as the air molecules collide between the 2 speakers. So you hear these 2 tones, and you hear this wah-wah. Wah, 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 wah. And your brainwaves will entrain to that. It's got to do with Mr. Wizard trick, kind of. If I shut the speaker off, then we just hear this tone. If I bring it back up, you'll hear the wah-wah appearing. He hooked people up to EEG machines and saw that, yes, your brainwaves would entrain to this sort of phantom wah-wah pulse, even if it wasn't an actual drum that was beating. Then he did something with headphones. So what if we put headphones on and we have 100 hertz and 105 hertz with headphones, and we hear this 5 cycle a second pulsing about here in the top of your head, because of how the brain processes 3D information. If the sound is directly, the sound is hitting both ears exactly at the same time, the sound must be somewhere along the midline, so the brain places it there. Interesting question, though, is where is the wah-wah coming from? If there's no air molecules colliding between speakers, because you've got headphones on and there's no air between, there's a brain between, unless you're an airhead, but there's a brain between, so what the heck is going on? Where's this pulse coming from? It's now revealing a true quirk of neurophysiology. That the brain, so this is sort of like this ear is going, excuse me, it's over here talking to this ear, going, excuse me, are you hearing what I'm hearing? And it's going, no. And then he goes, are you hearing what I'm hearing? No. And now the brain is in this conundrum because anything that's weird and unknown is a possible threat. So I have to have sort of an alarm response to that until I can figure it out. How the brain is going to try to figure it out is by synchronizing the electrical activity between the two hemispheres across the corpus callosum and synchronizing up the electrical activity of the brain and jumping to a conclusion that there must be the wah-wah. Because the brain knows that whenever you've got these two tones, air molecules should interact and create a phase modulation. And it's expecting that to happen. And so it jumps to a conclusion and manufactures it to happen from nowhere. And the real event never happens because there's no air there. So we just tricked the brain into manufacturing a binaural beat that it made all on its own and then entrained to it. It's a phantom pulse that's just there because of weird neural processing. Now we've got an active brainwave entrainment process, which is much more powerful than listening passively just through speakers. I will get the entrainment with speakers, but I won't get the synchronicity of the hemispheres, which is only a property of listening with headphones, where one ear can't hear what the other ear is hearing, right? Because the brain is going, wait a second, there's no time in all biological evolution where one ear could hear something that the other one didn't hear because sound, kind of goes everywhere. Sound disperses everywhere, so we've got this weird conundrum. Now we can take advantage of that. Because this property of synchronizing of the hemispheres is an important one. It's the state that we're all looking for. It's the place where the problem gets solved, when a new idea drops into your head, when an epiphany happens, when new lateral out-of-the-box kind of ideas, that's where they come from. Everybody wants that state, and nobody knows exactly how to get there. It seems to come at random intervals. Some people have successful in training themselves up to it, but nobody knows exactly how to get there. Now we know if we have two tones slightly out of tune in headphones, we can pick the lock of that program and make it happen. And now we can train it up. For the first time in our whole biological history, we can float the brain for prolonged periods of time in these ecstatic states where the hemispheres are floating in this state of synchronicity. Now, if you start to take things like PubMed articles and research happening all over the world for the last 20 years with advanced EEG machines to measure what happens in the brain of someone who's been meditating for 30 years, who can attain these states that we're trying to get to. Every culture seems to have come up with a solution, a meditation solution, a technique, a technology in order to get there. So you'll see that various cultures all have different meditation practices. For instance, the Dalai Lama did a research project at the University of Wisconsin in 2001, where he brought these meditators who had been meditating for 30 years, practicing a certain Tibetan Buddhist type of meditation. And they're measuring with fMRI machines and advanced EEG machines and to see, what's going on in the brain. And what they saw was massive amplitudes of gamma brain activity. So now we know that a certain type of Tibetan Buddhist meditation generates gamma brain activity. And the sort of experience that they were describing that they were having was sort of a empathic, emotional connection with all living beings in the universe. I said, I want to go there. That sounds like good to me. Gamma was discovered in the late 80s by accident. Gamma is a very high brain frequency. When I went to school, I learned the big four: beta, alpha, theta, delta. And the big four is what's still taught today in most EEG nomenclature, except about 50% of them have now included gamma, which has been around since the 80s. The system is a bit slow, but Each one of these brain states is associated with brain neurons firing at certain speeds. So for some reason, the speed of the firing has to do with different states. So really, you've got neurons firing in the brain where they link other neurons with them that all fire together. And then they cause the group next to them to fire, and the next ones to fire, and the next ones to fire. Like going to a football game and doing the wave, right? We get sweeps of electrical depolarization across the cortex at different speeds. And if the sweeps across the cortex, these brain waves, that's why they're called brain waves, sweeps of depolarization. If the brain wave sweeps are at 20 sweeps per second across the cortex, that's looked upon as about mid-beta brain activity, associated with externally directed, regular cognitive consciousness, the kind of stuff that we're doing now, unless I'm boring you and you're falling asleep into alpha. Externally directed mental activity that's focused on a purpose, that's beta. Alpha at 13 hertz, beta is 13 hertz up to about 38. Alpha is 13 hertz down to about 7 or 8, depending on which textbook you read. It's all based on bell curve studies of large groups of people. Somewhere between 7 and 8 hertz. Once you get into alpha, now you're in peripheral vision, still a mental activity. So beta is mental activity that's sort of linear, focused, goal-oriented. Alpha is peripheral vision, focus on everything, holographic. Theta is REM sleep dreaming, imagination, creativity. That's about 7 or 8 down to about 4. And then below 4 down to about 0.5 is delta, where you go in deepest sleep. Each one of these states has a meditation application, an ordinary life application, and a sleep application. I think what differentiates those is a full body mudra, full body position. We take you from the middle of your dreaming sleep cycle in theta, in the middle of the night, at 5 hertz theta, in a dream, and teleport you into your workplace in front of a computer screen in a cubicle. Same brain frequency of 5 hertz, but you're not dreaming, you're not asleep, you're not dreaming. You're using your imagination, or you're using your memory. If I ask you, what did you have for breakfast this morning? Everybody's kind of doing it now. What did you have for breakfast this morning? You play a movie in your brain. That you're preparing breakfast or eating breakfast, you play a movie. Your brain goes into a theta function in order to retrieve the memory, which is on film reel, so to speak. So now that's what you are in the middle of the day with the same exact brain frequency. So when I'm laying down in my bed, put the covers on, turn the light out, my brain goes, oh, this body position means I'm running the sleep program. But if I'm sitting at a desk in front of my computer, my brain is saying, oh, this body position is running an everyday use program of the same frequency of theta. Then I could teleport you out of that into your meditation chamber where your butt is sitting on the pillow with your legs crossed. And the brain is going, oh, that body position tells me this is a meditation program. So now I'm in this theta, that's where shamanic journeying happens. Zazen is alpha. I'm well aware that I'm sitting on my butt in a chair, on the floor on a pillow in a room with smells and wind in the trees and sounds and sensations, but it's peripheral vision. All of those are a big mandala where everything is the same. I'm aware of my breath. That's a classic alpha state. So now we see that every brain state that you can identify has a meditation application. From different cultures growing up in a vacuum, we came up with our own solution of how to create a door into the big sort of God room. You got the big God room, you got a bunch of doors to go to, and each door is a different meditation practice from a different country, from a different culture. There's no one best. It's an exploration, it's a smorgasbord of consciousness. And you would know which one is the best for you unless you try them, right? That's what we provide. That's we have a booth here, in case you don't know. It's the Skye Lounge. So when you go into the hall, it's all the way down at the back on the right. We combine, so what we're up to is taking the latest high-tech medical monitoring systems and combining that with the latest high-tech sound generating equipment and combining those together with the latest research that's done into altered states of consciousness and meditation and healing and self-perfection and aligning those all together. For instance, we see that this particular type of meditation over here, we hook these people up to EEG machines and we see a certain brain picture show up. And we use high-tech methods of brainwave entrainment with binaural beats and headphones that force this to happen and then train you to that exact brain frequency pattern of this meditator. We just pick the lock of a neural program in a gym for your brain to meditate. Because the person who wants to try to meditate and do this type of meditation over here, how are you supposed to figure out how to do it? I mean, I want to meditate. How do I meditate? And somebody says, well, you kind of do this and you kind of do that. And you go, well, nobody can explain to you exactly what to do. I mean, they kind of give, Zen koans like one hand clapping or something. But as a Westerner, you sit there twiddling your thumbs and getting bored and your voices in your head are getting louder. And how many decades do I have to do this before I get somewhere? When we go back to something like this, the first monk who came out with one of these and rubbed this bowl and had his fellow monks immediately go into this state and say, boy, how'd you do that? This was a super high-tech device of the time for taking a shortcut. So I don't have to sit in my butt for X number of years, that I can shortcut the process with sound. Every culture has used sound of some kind. In India, be prepared for this guy. The sound from this is going to penetrate right into the middle of your brain. See what I mean? These guys were no slouches. I mean, I have to say, I've got an advanced recording studio with $50,000 worth of equipment and doing all this incredible stuff with EEG and heart rate variability monitors. We can pop up your autonomic nervous system on a computer screen live. We can see the sympathetic parasympathetic live on a computer screen. The master control system that tells all systems what to do, the internal physician program, under the hood, based on the idea that, there's an organic biological intelligence inside each of us who knows how to grow your body out of 2 cells, differentiate the tissues, make them all grow into what you are, and then govern its function under the hood without you thinking about it. Right now, that's happening. And who's governing that is not some stranger. It's you. It's your true inner biological identity. Who you think you are, on top of that, the person who is in this room listening to me right now, your personality is not you. It is you, but my hand is me. My finger is me, my fingernail is me. My personality is also me. But it's not me. It's not me with a capital M. I get in touch with that part of me if I take like mushrooms or something. Then who I think I am, I see dissolving away in a puff of smoke. And who's left is a deep, ancient, aware, powerful, personal sort of godhood thing that knows the answers to all the questions. And it's me, my root part, under the hood right now, that part. That's the part everybody's been trying to get to in every culture on earth since the beginning of time. Part of the answers inside that I'm trying to get to is, why am I here? What am I here to do? What's my job description? What's my purpose? That's our path that we're trying to find. If we're unlucky enough, like most people are, that at a critical moment, you deviate from the master path of your life, where you're following your heart and it tugs you on this path, and the doors open and the synchronicities happen. But at a certain age, when you're on your own, you have to start figuring out, how am I going to make it in life? And there comes a crucial point for all of us where we first choose the left fork instead of the right fork. We're kind of sort of fated to walk this path of life to find out the meaning and purpose of our lives. But the fate of walking this path always leads to a fork where we're forced by fate to make a free will decision. That's what the two of those come together. So my heart is tugging me to the right path that's got a tightrope across a chasm with no visible means of support. No way I can figure out how I'm going to make it in life that way. But my heart is tugging me there. And the adults in my life are whispering in my ear, grow up and don't be so naive, get a job. On this road you can see paycheck, retirement, 401, And so once I choose that path, that's when the pain starts. It's a pain in the spirit, where I am no longer walking the path, the cosmic path, on the greatest journey of all time. It's the Gilgamesh story for each of us, to find our purpose, why we're here. We're magical beings. Every atom in my body was once inside a star. All of the protons and all the atoms in my body are the oldest particles in the universe. I have morphed through many forms on this journey. In each journey, I learned something. This time, I'm learning that once I deviate from that path of following my heart and searching for the meaning of my soul, then I'm in pain and I'm sick. It's a pain of spirit. I've deviated off and I'm in a little circle over here in a cubicle looking at a computer screen. I wake up with an alarm clock and I hustle the kids to school and I get in a traffic jam working for a boss with the emotional development of a 3-year-old. Does this sound familiar to anybody? So, and then there's another traffic jam back home and it's television and fast food and junk in the food and weird frequencies in the air and emissions coming out of my walls. And I'm in a 21st century marathon of stress that my body was never designed for. This body takes generations of slow evolutionary adaptive change to slow planetary changes in my environment. Take tens of thousands of years. Plenty of time to adapt. But since the beginning of the 20th century, we have an acceleration of an abnormal world that is so far out of bounds for what your body was designed for, that we're living in a marathon of for some little animal, right? You see an animal and he sees you, sympathetic turns on for both of you, you race around, you catch the animal. And then it comes back to zero. Sympathetic returns to homeostasis. Energy comes back into my reservoir. I start working on my list, internal position programs, working on a list. It has to balance and synchronize all my body systems on a continual basis. It has to send orders out to rebuild tissues. It's got to govern my biochemistry and my organs and my glands and my meridians and my chakras and all the rest on a continual basis. But it can't if I'm running a fight or flight response. By definition, it's disengaged. My body will pull all the available energy into my muscles to fight for my life. So that's where we find ourselves. In a world that is forcing us into a marathon of stress, where there's no solution except to push your foot on the gas and bullnose your way through the stresses with momentum as a survival tool. Then you end up getting stuck in the fight or flight response all the time. It never goes away. It's a permanent fixture now. When that's the case, the internal position program is disengaged. The reservoir is emptied out into my muscles to fight for my life. My adrenals are being kicked constantly, they're racing. When the adrenals are racing, what does it do? Raises your blood pressure. Adrenaline suppresses pancreatic function to release extra glucose to be hyper strong to fight for my life. So I've got high blood pressure, high blood glucose, the two biggest prescriptions in the Western world. Most a mistake. You got nothing wrong with your heart. You got nothing wrong with your pancreas. You've got hyperadrenals running. Unless they collapse. If they collapse, adrenaline falls flat and you get chronic fatigue syndrome. The secondary hormone from the adrenals is corticosteroid hormones, the master anti-inflammatory hormones that suppress unneeded inflammation responses throughout my body. Every time I move my arm at the joint surface, friction destroys the cells. But new ones are born to replace them at the same rate, so I don't need pain, I don't need inflammation. Adrenals supply corticosteroid hormones to suppress unneeded inflammation, and neurons in my brainstem suppress with endorphins. So that's called inflammation responses throughout my body start to pick up all over the place. And now it's just a matter of where's your genetic weak spot. If my genetic weak spot is my connective tissue, my joints, I have arthritis. Right? If it's my mucous membranes, I have chronic allergies. And on it goes, like that. I go to the medical doctor, he does tests. I'm not pathological, the tests are all looking for pathology, I'm not pathological. Therefore, they don't know what to do with me, so take this pill. A happy pill. And I come back and say, well, the pill's not working. So they give me, well, we'll try this one. We go, well, wait a second, time out. I thought you guys knew what you were doing here. This looks like throwing darts to the wall. Because it's a functional imbalance, which is beyond modern medicine. They deal with pathologies. Pathologies happen after I have let this go for so long that tissues start to drop off the cliff. Then I do have pathology. The ultimate key to this is to return the sympathetic out of this stuck mode and restore homeostasis. Then the internal position comes back online and starts working on this list. I've seen patients where it's 30 years. It blows my mind that the body could be alive for 30 years without the internal position program, managing all my organs and glands and body chemistry and all the rest is supposed to be doing. It's not doing that. It's not rebuilding any tissues. What do you think is going to happen? You're going to end up with all kinds of symptoms and all kinds of diseases that have fancy smancy names with insurance codes. So it's not just me that thinks this, by the way. The modern medical system itself understands this. It's called allostatic load. Allostatic load is a measure of how intact is your stress handling system versus the stresses it has to handle from the outside world and from my inner environment of my body. If I have good allostatic load, then my stress handling system is up to the task of what's coming at it, no problem. But if I have allostatic overload, there's more stresses than my body can handle, and I end up with sympathetic on all the time. So as I say, we can hook you up. We can see the sympathetic, parasympathetic. When you're upright, gravity pulls the blood out of your head. It kicks the sympathetic on a little bit, kicks the adrenals a little bit, raises your blood pressure to equalize that. That's normal. But when you lay down, the sympathetic should be on and collapse down to zero homeostasis in 3 minutes. It's a standard clinical test for autonomic function. So that's called the Raglan test. That's what we do. We hook you up with a sophisticated real-time HRV system. Allostatic load is measured with heart rate variability. So heart rate variability is a gold standard in modern medicine. And we lean you back and we wait for 3 minutes to see what happens. And after 3 minutes, the sympathetic is still on. We have a positive clinical finding of runaway fight or flight response, and we know that's bad. And with that in place, we can start exploring, exposing you to different sound frequencies in a sweep of sound frequencies from 50 to 200 hertz in a slow sweep that goes 4 minutes up to 200 and back down to 50. Someplace in there is a magic frequency for you. We don't know what it is, but we can watch your nervous system responding to the sound waves as they're slowly sweeping, getting closer and closer to the right one for you. You can see the stress response of the sympathetic collapsing, collapsing, collapsing down until it hits this point. We just made it happen. And the computer program grabs it and displays that frequency for us. And now I know if I expose you to that frequency, this will happen. It's sound, I can give it to you. You can listen at home. At the office, you're on the sound chair. The sound waves and all these octaves, that frequency, all do the same thing, octave resonance, coming through your body and massaging your cells. We're speaking the sound right into your whole body, and also in your headphones, where octaves of that frequency are brainwave frequencies. So now we've identified specific brain frequencies that unlock healing programs for your physical body, emotions, mind. And we run you through each one of them in an orderly, progressive series of sessions to take you to the gym of healing, so to speak. And then once those symptoms all go away, because the internal position is back in place and I can reach my safe place, that's a prerequisite for being able to meditate. And you don't want to start embarking on a meditation path with a lot of physical, emotional, and mental baggage, because now you're a spiritual bull in a china shop. Get yourself in trouble. You can't take this stuff to etheric realms. It's dangerous to do that, which is what the esoteric schools always taught. Methodical, correct order of things. There's no skipping ahead in line in this world. You can't cheat nature. You can't get away with something. The bill always comes due. Always pay what you owe now, when you know what the money is due. Otherwise, the universe will take it out of your hide later, and it may not be in a form that you approve of. So anyway, if you want to, my time is up, and if you want to experience what this is like, we have free sessions on this sound chair I'm talking about with a headphone track and brain entrainment, so you can see just how mind-blowing, high-tech brain entrainment and technology can be in just 10 minutes. You'll see. It's like, I did a national program with nurses in crisis. I had 10 minutes on a 15-minute break with nurses to take them from agitated down to here and back up to non-agitated state. And that was really the project that showed me what can happen in 10 minutes. I wouldn't have ever gone there myself because I wouldn't have suspected that so much could take place in just 10 minutes. You'll see. Check it out. Thank you all very much for being here.